Chapter 18. Daoism becomes a religion around 200 to 400 of the Common Era. Part 1. Huang-Lao, How Laozi Became a God, an apocalyptic book that inspired a revolution, and how a Daoist master established a theocracy. Written and produced by Thomas Tyseal. Copyright Thomas Tyseal, unless otherwise noted. The great classical philosophers of Daoism were the product of the late spring and autumn period and the early warring states period, between about 500 to 300 BCE during the Zhou dynasty. During the late stage of the warring states period, around 200 BCE, a movement called Huang-Lao arose in the state of Qi, the modern Shandong area between Beijing and Shanghai. It was ruled by the descendants of the Yellow Emperor. The name Huang-Lao fused the words Huang, meaning yellow, for the Yellow Emperor, and Lao for Laozi. Huang-Lao was an attempt to take the ideas of Laozi and apply them within a legalistic framework to the governance associated with the Yellow Emperor and Confucius. Huang-Lao is the precursor to religious Daoism, Daoism that merged folk religion and philosophy and created a priestly order. As just noted, Huang-Lao attempted to apply the teachings of the Yellow Emperor, Huang Di. Historians, however, have scant evidence that there ever was a Yellow Emperor, and up until 1973 they knew nothing of his teachings. In 1973, archaeologists found 4 previously unknown texts, now called the 4 Classics of the Yellow Emperor, among the Mawangdui silk text, characters written on silk found in a tomb shown here that was sealed in 168 BCE. One of the teachings found on these Yellow Emperor silks was the importance of following the natural way, which is, of course, what Tao means. Thus a connection was made between the Yellow Emperor and Daoism, that is, Huang-Lao. Huang-Lao ideology certainly borrowed from the great classical Daoist philosophers, and it included belief in the yin and yang as complementary natural forces of the Tao. But Huang-Lao teachings also embraced the pursuit of immortality, sacrifices to spirits, exorcisms and incantations, all folk shamanistic practices. These would later be incorporated into what became Daoism. The Huang-Lao emphasis on government is essentially a Confucian occupation. Indeed, the 6th ruler of the Han dynasty, Emperor Wu, a year into his reign, made Confucianism the official state ideology. But he also believed in the Huang-Lao principles of immortality, and Huang-Lao longevity practitioners, that is, early Daoists, were eagerly but unofficially courted. These practices included alchemy and fashioning talismans to petition heaven for favors and protection. Daoists also practiced divination and employed meditation and conducted spiritual retreats in the mountains, viewed as the sacred home of the Tao. From early on, continuing through till today, Daoists claim to be able to manipulate natural and supernatural powers. Thus, Daoism retains ancient shamanistic beliefs. Daoists see the world as animated by spirits and deities, which can be summoned or controlled by skilled adepts. Among the magical powers some Daoists claim is the ability to summon rain, protect people from physical and spiritual harm, heal illnesses, fight off malevolent spirits, invoke the assistance of deities, and guide, protect, and rescue the dead. These activities require priests, not laymen, who follow specific procedures. These procedures often require Taoist priests to undergo a period of preparatory fasting and baths of purification. During this period, they may draw structured talismans on paper, fulu, as shown here, for use in ceremonies, or they may construct amulets for use by those requesting help. In addition, to prepare for the ceremony, Taoist priests often construct an altar on which specific objects are placed in specific patterns. Sometimes specific flags surround the altar. On the altar at specific times, the talismans may be burned and the ashes dissolved in liquid and ingested while incantations or invocations are read or chanted. The Taoist priest may also perform specific dances like the Dance of Yu. Fire and swords may be used in the ceremony, and mirrors may be used as containers to catch spirits. The Warring States period of the Zhou dynasty, during which Huang-Lao arose, was followed by the brief reign of the Qin dynasty from 221 to 206 BCE, a mere 15 years. The Qin dynasty unified the warring states and connected some of the existing defensive walls to form what eventually became the Great Wall of China. In 213 BCE, the Qin Emperor Shi Huangdi also ordered the burning of all books except those on medicine, prophecy, and farming, thus making the job of future historians of China almost impossible. The word China likely comes from the word Qin, as in the Qin dynasty. The word was adopted by foreigners as a name for the country. Chinese have had many names for their own country, now called Zhongguo, meaning Central Kingdom. Huang-Lao continued through the Qin dynasty and into the Han dynasty, which lasted from 206 BCE to 221 of the Common Era. It was during this period when the religion we now call Daoism arose. During the Han Dynasty, the influence of Laozi grew. Indeed, the Han Emperor Huan built a palace temple to Laozi in 165 CE on the site believed to be Laozi's birthplace in modern-day Luyi County in the Henan province, just west of the previously mentioned Shandong province. The Laozi Palace Temple was later rebuilt and named the Supreme Clarity Temple, Taipingjing. Today, only a placard and a few small buildings remain at the site. More significant, however, is the inscription in honor of Laozi, written around 166 CE by Pianshao, Chancellor of the province of Qin, for the dedication of the original temple palace. It says that Laozi came out of the vital breath of chaos and is as eternal as the three lights of the sun, moon, and stars. It describes him as the incarnation of Tao and that he shelters and saves people. Further, it portrays him as periodically appearing before the great kings of China's past, before he eventually became physically incarnate. Thus, by the 2nd century of the Common Era, Laozi was already seen as divine. At about the same time as the original temple palace to Laozi was built by the emperor in Laozi's hometown, a book called the Book of Great Peace, the Taipingjing, was written in China by an unknown Daoist author. The text that made it out to our times dates from 471 of the Common Era, when Lu Jing, whom we'll meet later, gathered together various Daoist scriptures to form the first Daoist canon. Thus, the content of the original is somewhat speculative. The book takes the form of a dialogue between a sage called the Celestial Master, Tianxi, and his disciples. As such, it mirrors Plato's didactic writing. The term Celestial Master continues to be used in Daoism. In addition to the familiar ancient subjects such as yin and yang, heaven and earth, the 5 elements, and the sexagenary cycle, the Taipingjing reads like a revelation, much like that of the prophets of Israel, to warn a sinful Han society that judgment was soon to fall upon it. Tradition says that this book was presented twice by a group of Daoist adepts known as Masters of the Formula, Fangxi, to Han rulers who rejected it as being too Daoist. Han rulers were Confucian. The Taipingjing foretold a time when a divine messenger, the perfect Lord of great peace, Taipingjing, an incarnation of the celestial master, would appear during a time of great chaos to save the elect, destroy evildoers, and usher in the great reign of peace, in which the government would be ruled by Daoist principles and order restored. The messenger to come was said to be surnamed Li, also known as Li Hong, literally plumb and clear or deep. Later, that Li would be interpreted to be an incarnation of Laozi, whose family name was Li. The Taipingjing was adopted as sacred scripture during the First Taiping Rebellion, also known as the Yellow Turban Rebellion, which occurred in 184 of the Common Era. The rebellion was led by the Daoist faith healer, Zhuangjue, who came from Huang-Lao tradition and founded with his brothers a Daoist sect known as the Way of Supreme Peace, the Taiping Dao. They organized thousands of peasants to revolt against the harsh work requirements and high taxes imposed upon them by the Han dynasty. The Yellow Turban Rebellion failed and cost millions of lives. It contributed, however, to the later collapse of the Han Empire. About the same time as the Taipingjing became popular, a healer and magistrate named Zhang Daoling, also trained in the Daoism, arrived in the Sichuan province where, in 142 of the Common Era, he claimed to have received a revelation on Mount Hemming from a divine Laozi, who would later be referred to as Lord Lao the Most High. Laozi was thus cast as the supreme agent of revelation and the promised Li from the Book of Great Peace, the Taipingjing, who would periodically appear to guide humanity. This sounds very much like a Chinese version of the Hindu avatars who periodically appear to save humanity that has gone astray. Zhang condemned the Han social order, proclaiming that it had failed to follow the ancient way, the Tao of the ancestors, had become corrupt, and that the demons of the underworld were soon to be released upon it. Only 240,000 people, he said, would be chosen as survivors, and that these seed people would repopulate China in a new era of peace. This sounds very much like the 144,000 to be saved as we read in the book of Revelation. Zhang's task was to lay down the legal and moral framework for this new era. It is said that in a vision, Laozi gave Zhang the title Celestial Master, which, you'll recall from the Taipingjing, was expected to appear on earth to save humanity during a time of great chaos. Zhang taught the importance of preserving spiritual energy, qi, in the body to attain immortality, and is said to have developed an elixir of immortality. In addition to being a faith healer, Zhang is said to have mastered the practices of far roaming, yuanyo, spiritually visiting remote places, walking among the stars, spiritual co-location, and being able to command the elements. At the end of his long life, he is said to have lived to age 122. He was said to rise bodily into the heavens, where he became an immortal. The parallel with the belief in Jesus' ascension is obvious. Zhang Daoling is often portrayed riding a tiger and wielding a demon-slaying sword and crushing 5 poisons. The tiger is likely a reference to Dragon Tiger Mountain, where Zhang Daoling founded temples. His picture is said to drive away evil spirits and protect people from illness. Zhang Daoling's movement was initially known as the Way of 5 Pecks of Rice, as his followers paid a tax of 5 pecks of rice, which was then distributed to the poor. His movement later became known as the Way of Celestial Masters, Tianxing Dao. A combination of spiritual practices advocated by Zhang Daoling proved very attractive to the masses. These include relative disregard of social status and gender. Anyone could become a leader by following prescribed practices. Teaching the importance of conserving spiritual energy, qi. Prescribing the confession of sins for spiritual healing and using talismans and ritual practices. Organizing ceremonies for petitioning spiritual powers. Healing and helping the poor. Eliminating the practice of animal sacrifice. And believing that Zhang Daoling was commissioned by the divine Laozi. Zhang's Celestial Masters Dao was the first organized Daoist movement, so Zhang Daoling is often called the founder of religious Daoism. Zhang Daoling is believed to have written a book containing 24 chapters explaining his teachings, but it has not been found. It is believed that he spent his last years authoring a commentary on the Taipingjing, which was used for teaching the Celestial Masters tradition and which has survived. Zhang Daoling is said to have died in 157 CE. As Daoism developed, he was recognized by some sects as one of the 4 heavenly masters, which also include Gujuan, founder of the Lingbao school, Zhujuan, patriarch of the Jingming and Lushan schools, and Sa Shujian from the Shenzhou tradition. Zhang was succeeded by his eldest son, Zhang Hen, who was succeeded by his son, Zhang Lu, who rebelled against the Han in 184 of the Common Era in the 5 Pecks of Rice rebellion, named after his grandfather's Way of 5 Pecks of Rice. After the success of another rebellion in 194 of the Common Era, Zhang Lu, who was a warlord as well as a religious leader, formed an independent state, a Daocracy, from captured lands in the Hanzhong Valley, which he renamed Hanning. Zhang Lu's movement became known as the One Orthodox, Auspicious, Authoritative Alliance of the Tao, Jingyi Mingwei, or simply the Way of Orthodox Unity or Way of Right Oneness. Zhang's state was divided into 24, later 28 and 36 parishes, each with a libationer who had both administrative and spiritual duties to educate and heal parishioners. Below them were demon soldiers, parishioners who had attained ritual achievements and who represented smaller units of the parish. Each parish featured a simple chamber of purity or quiet room, devoid of images, where a parishioner could read scripture, formally meditate on their sins, ailments, or problems, and supplicate divine assistance, and with the help of a libationer or demon soldier, perform appropriate rites, often followed by a written petition to the three bureaus, that is, heaven, earth, and water, that were dispatched by various means, such as exposure to the elements, burial, or depositing in rivers. In 215, the Han warlord Cao Cao, who later became the king of Wei and whose son inaugurated the Three Kingdoms period, invaded Sichuan, dissolved Changhan, the Daoist theocratic state, and moved its occupants near his capital in the northeast. The celestial masters survived under Zhang Lu by submitting to Cao Cao's authority. By the 4th century of the Common Era, the celestial master Way of Orthodox Unity had spread throughout China. What we've seen in this section is the slow rise of Daoism as a religion, starting with the desire to bring the kingdom of order venerated by Confucius and the Yellow Emperor to earth. Parallel with this desire, we saw the process of making Laozi divine, as he, more than anyone else at this time, provided the spiritual foundation for a Chinese religion. And we saw how spiritual writing, the Taipingjing, much like the Book of Revelation in Christianity, came to inspire belief in the coming of a Messiah who would establish a theocracy. We also saw that claims to be the Messiah were made and that a theocracy was indeed established. We also saw how beliefs in magical powers of Daoist priests and the talismans, amulets, and rituals they performed were very much a part of the loosely constructed and evolving Daoist religion during the Han Dynasty. In the next section, we'll see how Daoism continued to evolve and splinter after the Han Dynasty fell.